The couple lived a modest life, running a small food stall on the corner of a quiet street. Their days were filled with the smell of spices, the clatter of pans, and the rhythm of customers coming and going. On the surface, it was enough to keep them afloat, but deep inside, there was a restlessness neither could ignore. Every evening as they closed their stall, they noticed the same faces: children lingering by the curb, elderly men with weary eyes, mothers clutching empty bags. Hunger was not a stranger in their neighborhood. It was a silent shadow that followed many home. One evening, as they shared their simple dinner, the wife put down her spoon and whispered, almost to herself, that they had more food than they needed. Her husband looked at her and knew she was thinking of those faces outside. That night, they decided to cook a little extra the next day, not to sell, but to give. It felt small, almost insignificant, but it was a beginning. The next morning, as the sun painted the street in soft gold, they set aside 5 meals. They wrapped them carefully and handed them to those who waited quietly near the stall. The gratitude they received was overwhelming, far greater than the food itself. An elderly woman pressed their hands with trembling fingers and murmured, blessings that seemed to carry the weight of generations. In that fragile moment, something stirred within them, a seed of compassion, tiny yet powerful. But starting was easy. Continuing was the real challenge. As they repeated this act over the next few days, they began to notice how many more people were waiting. For every meal they gave, there were always hands left empty. That thought weighed heavily on their hearts, yet it also pushed them forward. They were just 2 ordinary people, but in their small act, they sensed a possibility far larger than themselves. At night, when exhaustion pressed against their shoulders, they talked quietly about what they had begun. The husband wondered if it was sustainable, while the wife reminded him that love was not measured by numbers, but by intention. It was not about solving hunger entirely, but about letting someone know they mattered, if only for a meal. The seed was planted, though they did not yet know how it would grow. Their hearts had already shifted. Their food stall was no longer just a place of business. It was becoming a place where love was quietly shared, one meal at a time. The days that followed brought both joy and weight. With each passing morning, more people gathered near their stall, their eyes carrying silent hope. The couple tried to prepare as much as they could, but their limited resources soon became clear. Flour ran out quicker, vegetables cost more than expected, and the money they earned from sales barely stretched far enough to cover their own needs. Some neighbors questioned their actions. A few shook their heads and muttered that feeding strangers would lead to ruin. Others suggested that people would become dependent and ungrateful. These words pierced deeply, stirring doubt in the husband's heart. At night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if they were chasing an impossible dream. One afternoon, when their supplies were low and their energy nearly gone, an elderly woman approached. She was frail, with silver hair pulled back in a thin braid. She accepted the meal they offered, then paused, her eyes glistening with tears. She told them it had been 2 days since her last proper meal, and that what they gave her was more than food, it was hope. She pressed the wife's hand tightly, whispering that kindness had a way of multiplying, just as a single seed can grow into a tree with countless branches. Her words sank deeply into their hearts. The wife, with tears of her own, shared the story with her husband that night. He sat silently, then slowly nodded. Perhaps their neighbors were right in saying they couldn't solve hunger, but the woman had reminded them that they were not trying to feed the world, they were trying to plant seeds of hope. The next morning, despite their exhaustion, they rose early and cooked again. They decided to push past fear and trust that their efforts had meaning. To their surprise, a few regular customers noticed their act of giving and quietly handed them extra rice and vegetables. Another brought cooking oil, saying he had more than enough at home. Though small, these contributions felt like lifelines. The couple realized they were no longer alone. For every doubt that weighed them down, there seemed to be a hand reaching out to lift them back up. And with every grateful smile, they discovered a quiet truth. Love shared did not drain them, it replenished them, filling the spaces where fear had lived. Their journey was far from easy, but in the flicker of gratitude and the quiet acts of kindness, they began to see that what they had started was more than just meals. It was the beginning of something larger than themselves. What began as a few meals each day slowly grew into something remarkable. Word of their kitchen spread through the neighborhood, then beyond. People who once doubted them began to step forward with offerings: bags of rice, baskets of fresh vegetables, jars of spices. Some offered time, rolling up their sleeves to chop, stir, and serve. Children carried water buckets, teenagers cleaned, and neighbors brought extra chairs so no one would be left standing. The small food stall transformed into a gathering place. Laughter mingled with the aroma of warm food, and the sound of gratitude filled the air like music. The couple watched in awe as the simple act that once felt like a burden of two hearts had now become the heartbeat of an entire community. There were still difficult days. Sometimes supplies ran thin, and the couple worried if they could feed everyone who came. But each time, help seemed to arrive unexpectedly. A farmer would deliver fresh produce, a baker would leave bread at their doorstep, or someone would quietly slip money into the donation jar. It felt as though the love they had given away was circling back to them, multiplied and renewed. Soon, hundreds of families were nourished daily. The kitchen was no longer theirs, alone it belonged to everyone. The couple often stood back and watched as neighbors, once strangers to one another, now served side by side. They realized that hunger had not only been about empty stomachs, but also about empty hearts longing for connection. By sharing love through food, they had awakened a sense of belonging that stretched far beyond a meal. One evening, as the sun set in hues of orange and gold, the husband and wife sat quietly, looking at the bustling kitchen around them. They remembered the first 5 meals they had given away, the doubts, the fears, and the tears. Now, they saw before them a living circle of kindness that would continue even without them. The husband whispered that they had started with nothing but a little love, and the wife smiled, replying that love, when shared, was never little, it always grew. In that moment, they understood something profound. Love shared was not only feeding the hungry, was feeding hope, dignity, and unity. What they had given was never lost. It had returned, multiplied, filling the community with warmth that would last far beyond the meals served. Sometimes, we believe love is fragile, easily used up if we give too much away. Yet, this story reminds us that love is the one thing that multiplies the moment it leaves our hands. A shared meal became a chain of kindness, proving that no act is ever too small to matter. When we choose to give, we awaken the possibility of change, not just for others, but for ourselves. May this story encourage us all to ask, what love can I share today? If this touched your heart, please like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more inspiring tales.